How do some couples continuously elevate their passion? Is there truly only one perfect person for us? Or maybe what we practice and how we think will ultimately nurture or destroy a relationship? Crank up the volume while we dive into the depths of love, passion, and sex to uncover simple concepts that will both surprise you and transform your life forever. Welcome to Intimacy Exposed.
Hello! Welcome to episode number 2, What Makes a World-Class Relationship? I gotta be honest, this is one of my most exciting things that I've wanted to talk about in a very long time, even though we've just started the podcast, because I believe that we are creating a world-class relationship, and through a lot of trial and error, tears and laughter, I think we've figured out a few things that we want to share with everybody. I'm John. This is my lovely wife, Crystal, co-host S for the podcast today.
Hello there.
She's actually the captain of this podcast. I'm just the deck mate, but today I'm taking the reins. So, world-class relationship. What is a world-class relationship? What does it mean? What makes up a world-class relationship? And what separates it from a mediocre or an average or a normal relationship, you might say? I think one of the first things that's definitely true in my life in all areas is a never-ending growth on an individual and on a relationship level. You have to constantly be wanting to strive for more, for better, for quicker resolution, for less frustration, for more joy, more happiness, more silliness, more laughter, more love, more passion, all the time. It doesn't mean it's a straight linear or exponential growth. There's going to be bumps along the way, but overall, you should always be striving for more, even when there's setbacks. I don't know if it's more important. I think it may be more important, but another component is an insatiable hunger for the other person's well-being and prioritizing their needs above your own. I can speak from personal experience. This is the most rewarding one and the most challenging one, because the last thing you want to do when you feel like you've been hurt, when you feel like the other person has done something to cause you pain, they don't understand you, is to make their needs a priority. It involves a level of vulnerability and trust that you really only get in intimate relationships, but I can speak from extensive personal experience that when you do, yes, there are times when you might get hurt short term just because it's a new muscle that you're trying to flex, but once the understanding is there between both partners, it is the most rewarding and gratifying and fulfilling thing that could ever happen. Absolutely, bar none. Nothing else comes close. And in order to do that, in order to do many things successfully in an intimate relationship, or even just in your own personal relationship with yourself, coworkers, friends, neighbors, people cutting you off on the highway to work, you have to understand your own feelings, emotions, and be able to communicate and identify them clearly. So, telling somebody that you're pissed off or that they pissed you off is not identifying exactly what feeling you're feeling and what caused that. It's pretty easy to go black and white and just to say, no, I'm angry. But a lot of times it's not anger. It's something more subtle, like frustration or annoyance or anxiety or some subset of anger. It's not actual anger. And when we say anger, we give it too much power because it's not actual anger. So it's very important to get really crystal clear on what you're feeling, on the emotions, etc. And with that vulnerability I mentioned earlier, it's a desire to be open to the other person, to listen to them, to share an end goal that's the same. You want to have an intense, deep connection with that person. Obviously, this is an intimate relationship. And the more that you use these and the more these components show up, the deeper that relationship will get. I think the last thing that kind of puts the bow around the present and ties it all together is both partners should really be going to the same place. So you really want to have, your future defined together and alignment in your vision. So It doesn't mean you have to be carbon copies of each other, doing the same thing, finishing each other's sentences, enjoying absolutely the exact same meal at a restaurant. But you need to be on the same page, 100%. If you are two different people in a canoe paddling opposite directions, you're not going to go anywhere but in a circle. You have to have a vision and a future destination in mind. The destination is not the goal, but you want to make sure that you strive for the same outcome. And there could be different variations with each person's journey, but overall, you should know exactly where you're going. Yeah.
I like that. I've never heard you, or I've heard that canoe analogy. Oh, it's analogy. Everyone, can I just tell you that John is the king of analogies? I'll be talking to him and he'll say, this, and this. And I'm like, okay. And I'm nodding my head and I'm saying, okay, that sounds great. I understand. And then he goes into, so it's kind of like, and I'm like, no, I already said I get it. But anyway, so I've grown to actually adore his analogies. So just to add to that, our world-class relationship, these are a lot of the components that we've come up with that describe it. And I guess one thing I'm going to add is why I like calling it a world-class relationship. I don't remember where exactly I heard it, but I love it because world-class to me, I don't know if you can get much higher. It's like the Diamond Club. It's, the Prestige Club. And the reason I like that is not to show that look where we've gotten or look how perfect our relationship is, because that's definitely not how we describe it. But it's something to always strive for, and it's something to live up to. So if we have a world-class relationship, we have high expectations. And I think meeting those expectations and appreciating each other and appreciating the work that you put in is kind of just like, what did you say? The bow around the present. I like that. Another analogy. I love you.
I love you too. And I love my analogies.
I know you do. All right. So if we were to break down, we wrote some notes about what we feel are some key elements to a world-class relationship. And the first thing that always comes into mind when we talk about a good relationship is communication. I think that anyone could agree with that. And we know a lot about communication. We all do. Even if we don't practice it, communication's a big one. One of our subsets of communication that we came up with that's really affected in a positive way the outcome of no one likes fighting. Fighting sucks, but if you can make fighting an effective task and come out at the end repaired and renewed and having a better sense of yourself and each other and what happened and how you can avoid it, how you can make it better next time, I say bring it on. It can be hurtful, but I think as long as you're repairing and making sure that you're not sweeping things under the rug, letting it hurt you down the road, I can honestly say that I don't think there's been one time in our relationship, because we did start quite early with this effective fighting. There's almost not been one time where I've brought something back from a week ago or 2 weeks ago and thrown it in your face because it was undone. And I can say the same thing for you, because we went to counseling quite early for like individual reasons. And we ended up being able to sit down and say, hey, well, why don't we learn a few tools at this counselor to help us? And one of those things was how to effectively fight. So when John and I originally went to counseling really early in our relationship, one of the things that we picked up and we learned, which has changed everything when it comes to being able to communicate during strife and fighting, is learning how to wait in a calm moment, being able to take a little bit of time to calm down, come together, sit face to face, hold each other's hands, which is probably one of the most important components, and be able to look into each other's eyes and take turns saying, I feel this, and allowing the other person to say, I'm sorry for causing this, or I'm sorry I made you feel this. Now we have a choice to feel the way that we feel, but in an intimate relationship, that person can have a huge impact on whether you're going to have those feelings or not, or do something that's going to cause you pain, suffering in some sort. So, it was really, really hard because standing or sitting face to face with someone who you've just had a fight with, holding their hand, looking at their eye when you really just kind of want to run out of the room, and being able to start like being really vulnerable in that moment, it was very difficult. We had to force ourselves to do it almost once a week and kind of just see if there's anything that we left undone for the week. And that was really difficult because we kind of, for John, I think he told me at one point he felt like he was digging up the past, but it was a good opportunity for us to just say, like, in this moment, I wanted to talk to you, but I didn't feel like I could in the time. And now this is a good, safe space. So, and it's evolved over 8 years. It's been, I guess maybe 7.5 years, and it's turned into an incredible space for us to be able to talk and kind of identify feelings, which when John and I chat, he has a different side of what he learned.
We would come together once a week, and like she said, we would sit face to face, absolutely must have physical connection, must be touching, and go through our feelings. And that's an incredibly uncomfortable position to be in if you're not well versed in communicating and very self-aware of your emotions and feelings and in tune with things. One thing that she kind of touched on but maybe didn't emphasize enough, and I definitely have seen the benefits of this over long term, we didn't have a massive fight and then just be like, all right, let's sit down and resolve this. No. There was a hole between that. Sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. In the beginning, definitely 2 to 3 to 4 hours, where there was a cooling off period, and you need to have that cooling off period. Even though, I was always one to want to resolve and fix, it's best to take some space. Level heads do prevail, but you have to come back. And when we did come back, it was extremely successful and very revealing. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
This is another thing that when you are able to be gentle with the other person and not expect them to jump ahead to a different, you should be better at doing this, or why can't you identify, or, how come you can't tell me you're feeling right off the bat? When we couldn't identify a feeling, when I could say, I'm just mad. And I knew it was more than that because I wasn't mad like stomping around the house because I didn't really display mad like that. We would go online and find a list of emotions, and we would print it off, and we would give the other person a little bit of space and just say, when you're ready to tell me about what emotion you might be feeling, I'm going to be ready to listen and apologize and be there for you. And I was quite in touch with my emotions before, and I could identify, but it was incredible. There was emotions that I was having that I didn't ever verbalize. So once you actually say it out loud to a partner in a safe space, it's quite liberating, actually. So this is, there's so many things that I'm so proud that we've done or adventures that we've had, but I can say that I don't know if we'd be here right now if we didn't learn to effectively fight, because we've been able to meet each other on a level that no one on this earth can meet me. So yeah, it's been an awesome journey.
I just want to touch on what she mentioned about printing off that list of emotions. Now, I think of myself as a fairly intelligent man who's fairly aware of things. But if you want an exercise in ignorance and humility, you should print off or look up a list of emotions or feelings. Because if you would have asked me beforehand, hey, how many emotions or feelings do you think there are? I probably would have told you 6, 7. Angry, sad, happy, excited, anxious, stressed, joyful. That's probably about it. And I print this thing off, and it's got 300 or 200 of these emotions, and all the little subtle characteristics that fall underneath anger or fall underneath happiness or fall underneath. And I was blown away. I would always say, I'm pissed off, but that's not actually true. Sometimes it was just, I'm annoyed, I'm disappointed, something much more subtle. And you really take the wind out of the sails of a fight when you can identify what you're actually feeling, and you clean out the closet because it doesn't get built up, and you're always identifying correctly what you feel. Everybody needs to do this. This should be mandatory. And to identify and be able to liberate yourself, like Crystal said, about feelings and emotions is absolutely the most, incredible feeling ever. So I highly recommend everybody does that.
They did not have this emoji back when we printed this off, but if I could have slapped an emoji on John's face, it would have been the one with the happy face that's like got the head blowing off, like your mind is blown. It was a great exercise. So moving on, so effective fighting being a key component of communication. We kind of talked a little bit about being vulnerable to one another. Understanding your feelings. One quote that I'm not sure if I'm getting this quote perfectly right, but one thing I really liked about understanding your feelings is the description of the purpose of intimacy and human connection is to expand on your human emotions. I love this quote because especially in men, I think men in our culture, especially in the last, in the past, maybe going forward, this is changing, but don't cry, be a man, quit talking about your feelings, like things like that are what has put this giant setback on anyone who is told not to have these feelings. And when you think about it, that the whole purpose of having a partner in life is to expand on your emotions, that's a game changer. Now I question whether this is part of communication, but we're going to say it anyway. Talking about personal and partner boundaries. And to break that apart, personal boundaries, as much as I absolutely adore this man sitting in front of me, there are certain things that I need to recognize that if I have a boundary and I don't ever want him to cross it, but I don't ever tell him about it, he could cross that boundary and I can feel all these feelings that are negative, rejection, not being safe. I could feel all of these things, and really, is it his fault? Because if I haven't told him where my boundary is, like if he asks me, can you do this, 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 and this, which let's be honest, I'm probably the one who does that to him. If he asks me to do all this and I just say, yeah, okay. No, I'm really describing the things I do to you, babe. I'm sorry. I love you. So when I ask him to do all of these things, if he says yes, and he doesn't tell me, you know what, I can't do that, it's interfering with something that's going on, and he just wants to please me instead, I'm going to cause all of these hurt feelings by him not setting a boundary. So is there anything you want to add to that? Is this kind of something that we've talked about recently that I want you to be stronger at, and you want to be stronger at when it comes to that specific situation?
Yeah, as she's describing it, I'm like, I know this story very well. This is very intimate to me. I'm a pleaser when it comes to Crystal, and I have a hard time saying no because I feel like I'm letting her down. But through necessity, to be honest, as my business has grown and as my role and demand and responsibilities have grown, I've had to say no because there's no other choice. And it was clunky at first, and it's still a work in progress. I'd say out of all the things I've progressed in, this is the one that still comes up because I absolutely love to do things for her. I love to surprise her. And then even more so when she asks me, I want to do it even more because now I know she expects it. And a lot of times it's actually better if I say no or put an amendment to that, under these conditions I can succeed, or let's talk about this next week, or can this wait so that I can do this and meet your expectations? It's a little hard to do, but I'm getting better at it, and it only serves to help us both even more.
Once we've talked about it, that if he is able to say no, I have expectations that it's not going to work, but I'm going to be able to have expectations that if he doesn't do it, then I completely understand. Now, when it comes to the second part about boundaries, John and I met later on in our 20s, and we both kind of had established like a good base of who we wanted to be in our mid-20s, which is almost laughable when you look back because it seems like so long ago. But I've seen other people allow external forces affect their relationship. It's never really been an issue for us, but I do have to say one point I'll say about it is protecting your relationship as if it's a small child that needs safety and love and protection and shielding. It's very important because other people, even if they have good intentions or not good intentions, can affect your relationship, and you can start to question each other, question yourself. And it's very important. So that's all I would really want to say about that. Now, there's lots of avenues to communicate, and there's everything from text, email, letter, phone, face-to-face. I think we could all agree that if you're going to have a disagreement, you're going to talk about feelings, you're going to be like opening your heart to someone else. Face-to-face is always going to be the number one choice in that area. Yeah, so maybe moving on to another component. What do you think?
I just want to touch on the communication and the different avenues. I'm calling everybody out on the podcast right now because whether you or your partner, your friend, your mom, your daughter, your sister, your cousin, your coworker, you've gotten too reliant on text. You have to have more appropriate avenues of communication. Out of all the ways that you can communicate, words only represent 7% of communication, which means that you're leaving 93% of what you want to say or what you're interpreting up to the unknown. You can't have any recognition of tone, feelings, context. It doesn't work. You need to have, whether it's Skype, face-to-face, a phone call at a minimum, you need to have something that you can pick up other avenues and other forms of communication. Like tone, volume, and how you emphasize on things represents another 38%. So even if you just had a phone call versus a text message, you're almost 50% the way there of fully effectively communicating, which is almost 4 times better than text. What this really means is you need to have some difficult conversations. And too many people are avoiding those difficult conversations, which is only making the situation worse because we're hiding behind our phones or our keyboards. And I understand it. It's like an extension of yourself. It's there all the time. It's convenient. Text 100% has a benefit and it has a purpose. Hey, I'm going to grab some coffees. Do you take 2 cream or 1? Hey, running late, traffic's terrible. I'll be there in 10. Of course, that was done by dictation, not text, because you can't text when you drive, right? But there are absolutely times and places for text messages. But intimate communication, especially with an intimate partner, use it sparingly. And just understand that body language represents 55% of how you communicate. Tone, volume, etc. is 38%, and words or verbal is only 7%. So face-to-face, phone call, text, email, letter, make sure you're using the right tool for the right job.
Well said, Mr. Yuzmenko.
Thank you.
So not so much that it's what you say to your partner, but how you say it seems to have a lot more weight on it. I think from what I've been learning recently, someone who's quite feminine in his or her like core, it actually takes more emphasis on how something is said and what someone looks like when they say it than words. But we found in the beginning of our relationship, and John's a very masculine man at his core, he used words. And then when I said, oh, hey, that didn't sound like that, he'd say, well, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. And I thought, I know, but you looked so scary when you said it to me, or you sounded angry. And he's like, we just couldn't meet there. So being able to know the different weights on how something is said, what it looks like, and what's actually being said is really important. When we are able to communicate, there are some things that can kind of interfere with communication. You can be at your, absolutely, I'm going to communicate with John. I'm all down for giving him exactly what it is he needs. But if I'm stressed when I start to communicate, if I'm distracted, or if my emotions are high, those are things to take into consideration, because my message is not going to get across. And even if it does get across, it may not come across as genuine as I want it to. Which then we're talking about tone and body language is taking precedent over the words that are coming out of my mouth. So yeah, just kind of seeing what state are you in when you're actually trying to communicate something very important. Cool.
All right. Number 2 on the components of a world-class relationship is values. We're not going to get into the nuances of values versus beliefs versus this, but effectively the way I kind of see it is, if you have 2 people in a relationship and they're brought together because of a circumstance or spontaneity or physical attraction, whatever that may be, you need shared interests, independence and interdependence, shared common goals, outcomes. You need things to hold you together and to bind you. So if you have one individual, and I'm speaking from personal experience as well, if you have one person in the relationship who is into health and self-development and improvement. And the other person could care less and just wants to watch Netflix and chill every single day, order in and not do nothing productive with their physicality. It's very difficult to succeed. I won't say you can't succeed, because maybe, there's people out there who are doing this very effectively, but I'm going to say that you have a very big hurdle to get over. You don't have to have every similar interest and every similar value, but you definitely need to share interests and values or grow into the other person's and adopt theirs. So even if you meet and maybe you're in a relationship right now that's new and you're kind of worried, like, wow, he or she doesn't really like this or do that, those things can grow and mold. When Crystal and I got together, I was doing a lot more running than she was, and over the years, she's developed into a far better runner than I am, and she ran her first ultra marathon last year. And now I'm actually stepping up to the plate running my first ultra marathon, because I looked at her and said, well, damn, if she can do it, I need to do it, And it's not a competition between us. It's, we conspire to inspire each other, and that's an area. I mean, I've been an avid fly fisherman is another one. I love fly fishing. I've fly fished all across Western Canada and North America. And it's a challenging sport to pick up, not because it's extremely difficult, but it's tricky. There's little subtleties and nuances to doing it right. You can do it wrong easily. And there's a bit of a technique and a little finesse that comes with it and skill. And I take her out one day and I show her a few tips, and in my head, my expectations are set based on what I went through, which was it took quite a while to get over this learning curve. And she looks at me, watches me a couple times, goes, oh yeah, okay, I think I get it. Picks up the rod, perfect cast. I'm like,
probably not. It probably took a couple of days to.
No, it didn't. Okay, no. So yes, similar interests, shared interests, whether you grow together over time or whether they happen naturally, I firmly believe you have to have values that align with each other. So, yeah. Anything you want to say?
Yeah. Well, I like a direction or something that you added to that, because whenever I think of values, I think if this person and this person are going to get married or just be life partners or, share a life together, they should have certain values that overlap or complement each other so that there's not conflict. And what I really like about what you said is when it came to the running thing, that shared value of health and adventure that we both have helped make the other person better. And so I like that it's not just avoiding conflict and avoiding problems, because we're almost 9 months pregnant and we're going to have a baby, and there's so many things that come with that. But I love that when we're talking about shared values, we're actually helping compound and grow each other's talents exponentially. So I like that. I like that idea. So yeah, so values really important for being able to attain a world-class relationship and grow in that direction. Number 3 for components of a world-class relationship: passion. Dun, dun, dun. Now, sometimes I find this difficult to actually define what passion is. So I literally just took a big old basket of all of these things that I think could possibly go with passion and put them together. Why don't you read the first one?
Sex.
Yeah.
It's sex.
Sex. Isn't that what you said the last episode?
I don't remember.
Yeah. So sex and physical contact, I don't think you can have passion if you're completely lacking this. There's some people that we know that we have never seen them touch. And they have babies. So obviously they do. But they, John and I are very physical. We, the whole PDA thing that people avoid, I think we got the opposite memo of that. My sister just bugging us because when I first met John and brought him over to my family, he was basically tackling me to the floor, tickling me, and everyone was just rolling their eyes. So I love physical contact. That's something that's helped us. Like I said before, it helps us communicate by holding each other's hands and looking at each other in a moment of effective fighting, which I think also in that moment creates passion, brings passion back, brings love back into a situation to help us understand each other. I think sex does exactly the same thing. It does so many different things. Is there anything that you want to? Oh, he's already nodding.
Oh yes.
Yes. So John has the floor.
Physical contact to me is more important than sex. Physical contact, proximity. If you really think about it, what's the difference between a relationship and an intimate relationship? It's intimacy. You don't get that unless you have proximity, unless you have physical contact, sex being a component of that. You need to touch. And now I don't think you have to be gloating and showing off in front of everybody. But if you're not developed enough as an individual or a couple to show affection in private and public, then there's something lacking in your either one of the partners, both of the partners of the relationship. That should be something that you glow about, something that you are so proud about that you want to display it. It happens without you even knowing because there's so much passion, there's so much love and joy. It flows through you that you can't help yourself. Most of the times, the only way you recognize that it's happening is because other people are commenting that, holy crap, like, you guys are very touchy-feely or lovey, or, you're always staring at him or always staring at her. If you're lacking that, I don't see how your relationship lasts. I guess it could last, which is a horrible, horrible word. You can coast by, you can stay together, two individuals under the same household, meeting your own needs and sometimes meeting the other person's need. But that's a horrible way to live. You have one life. You should strive for world class. And world class to me is physical contact and proximity.
I guess one reason that some people maybe don't have a lot of physical contact or don't value it is there can be a lot of past childhood teachings, memories, or something like that that could be tied in with physical contact. So, that's a much larger subject, a much larger connection to something completely different that's not really focused or coming from your passionate relationship. So that would be a good thing to explore if you're feeling like it's wrong to have physical contact, or that there's connotations attached to sex or touching that are not positive. Then that's definitely it's great if you can discover that, because it's something you can now explore. So passion with sex and physical contact. John touched on proximity, being close together. It's hard to be, work far, far away on the other side of the world than your lover and still have that passion. But there are ways to do it. I think you just need to explore. And with all of these things comes its own component of quality time. So making sure that it's not so much quantity, but quality of time. Yeah. So why don't you move on to component number 4, baby?
I'm just going to build on quality time a little bit. So this is obviously an important subject for me in general. Passion is one of my number one values, just as an individual, also in our relationship. But quality time, yeah. Put down the phone. There's nothing else to talk about. Put down the phone. Be present with your partner. Your partner doesn't care about the latest Facebook notification or Twitter feed. Put down your phone. Stare at your partner. Get to know them. Recognize the subtleties in their face and their expression. Crystal's little laugh lines that she has on the side of her eyes.
Hey, no, I don't.
The way she flows when she's in the state. She kind of cocks her head to the side. All these little things I would never notice if I was too preoccupied with something else. You need to put down the phone. You need to shut off the distractions, whether it's TV, phone, an iPad, something in the background. Presence. Be present with your partner. So important.
I love that. I love that this is so important to you, and it's important to me too. It's never been. But the thing is, a phone is an addiction. We all know this. This is nothing. We're not telling you anything like incredibly new, guys. But start off, instead of saying, okay, now we're going to be more present and we're going to put away our phones and we're just going to pay attention to each other. That's a great goal. Start off with a date night once a week. Turn off your phone. You don't even need your phone. Take your phone, put it on your dresser, and walk out the door. If you're going to get lost, ask for directions. If you can't find a place to eat, well, I think that you're living in a desert. There's places everywhere. Okay, so go on a date night, put your phone away. And we do this every single date night. We might bring a phone because we want to research something, you know, for like our future plans or something, but it has nothing to do with Facebook, any social media. And honestly, our date nights are better without it. So put away your phone and start out with even just that date night where it's 3 or 4 hours. You're going out, you're totally focused on each other. Have that for a few weeks and really see how it impacts your life. And then, you know, if you have kids, we don't have kids yet, but we're going to, and we're trying to figure out all the ways that we can make sure that we are completely present in this moment. If my kid comes up and talks to me, or my kid is staring at me as an infant, my phone is not going to be between us. My phone is going to be off to the side, face down, out of sight, out of mind, because I need to be present. And if I want to value that with my relationship with John, I'm going to need to show how that becomes valued with my relationship with my child. So I love that point. So thanks for bringing it up, babe.
No worries. All of these things, again, I think goes back to what we started with, which is growth, as the fourth kind of component to a world-class relationship. Growth is absolutely critical. And again, it's not a linear path. It looks more like a stock chart, you know, it's up, down, but
did you just compare growth in a relationship to a stock chart?
Yeah.
I love you. That's so you.
Absolutely. It's, you know, some relationships, it looks like 2008 and the stock chart is through the floor. But you want a relationship that has been like a bull market for the last 10 years, constantly just getting better and bigger and better and bigger. There's going to be minor setbacks. Absolutely. We're all human. We're going to have a bad, you know, moment, but don't allow it to be a bad day. Don't allow it to be a bad week. You know, these things don't come naturally to most people, myself included. I have had to train myself to cut out negativity. I have had to train myself to limit my interactions with certain people in my circle because I just can't have too much influence, whether conscious or unconscious, from them. And I'm constantly looking for ways to excite and delight my partner, myself, to push ourselves. You know, it doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to always be taking your spouse to the latest and greatest this or the best that. It can be something as simple as sharing a bottle of wine and some cards and just laughing. It can be reminiscing through old photos of when you guys were younger. It can be something so simple. And I'm telling you, constantly grow, because if you're not growing together, you're growing apart. You may not see it because it's subtle, small changes, but just like the frog in boiling water, it becomes the new norm. And then all of a sudden your relationship's dead and it's too late. So don't ever stop focusing on growth. Growth is absolutely critical in all areas of your relationship.
Yeah, there's a bunch of quotes out there, and as cliche as it may seem to just like live off of quotes, you know, they do for you what you want them to do. I grew up as an esthetician, and they didn't have a motivational speaker necessarily with aesthetics in the salon that I worked at, but they had a motivational speaker for hair, and his name was Wayne Grund. He's from Canada. And he always had these like little quotes, and yes, they help with work, but it's been almost 2 decades since I first heard it. And I still think about it. Like, when you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. If you continue to do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always got. You know, all of these things, if you're really comfortable and everything seems to be coming easy, I don't want to be negative or touch on something that's like, you know, that like not so positive, but you're probably not growing. Growing is, especially at first, it is so uncomfortable. Like, picture we're brand new in a relationship. We're having a fight. We're both mad. We both think we're right. We don't care what the other person is saying. And then we sit down face to face. And I'm going to say that we're both quite, I don't want to say stubborn, but we're both passionate.
Strong-willed.
Strong-willed. I like that. That sounds nice. We're both strong-willed. And then we're sitting down face to face, looking at each other, waiting to hear what I'm going to apologize for, which was, you know, seemed ridiculous because, you know, I don't know. And at the beginning it's clunky, and sometimes we would sit down and have an effective fight, and then we would fight even bigger. And then it would be like another day of fighting and hurt and pain. But honestly, to go through that pain to get to where we are now, it could have been 10 times bigger and more painful, and it still would have been way more worth it than being comfortable. So I'm so grateful that we've gone through, I would call pain. But I'm so glad that we went through that.
I would call it challenge.
Yeah, I know. And that's the difference between us. And I love that because you're always pushing me to be more positive, because the words that come out of our mouth really do dictate how you feel, how you think about yourself, how you think about your relationship. So when it comes to growth as a couple and growth individually, you cannot do these separately, meaning one without the other. I can grow individually, but if I'm leaving my relationship behind, I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to get to that fabulous world-class relationship with my partner. And just the same, generally, if you're growing as a couple, it's kind of hard not to grow individually because you're growing two people together. Yeah, that's exponential growth. There was a movie that we used to watch with Tom Cruise. We've seen it a few times, and it said, "Are we still an effective team?" And I love that because it just reminds us that we're doing this for a reason, and we help. Like it's like that star power on Mario Brothers. Do 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 do. I feel like I can go faster, farther, jump higher, all of these things when we're growing as a couple. So it's one of my favorite things. Also something that I kind of touched on this, but when you grow individually, I feel like my relationship with you has gotten better when I went after all the things individually that have made my life better. When I decided to go back to school to become a nurse, it was something that I wanted to do, not for anyone else, but for me. And when I got to do that and I got supported by you, I have more respect for you. I feel as though there's nothing that I could want that you would not stand behind me. And that makes our relationship far greater than the opposite. So, yeah. Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah. Coincidentally enough, like yesterday was a very taxing, challenging, stressful day, and a day with emotional roller coasters, mainly because of my business, just the seasonality of it and the cyclicality and how intense it comes. And some of that can drip into my personal life as hard as I try. And I've become, I think, very good at eliminating that. And I've got enough tools and systems in place for outlets to try to mitigate that. But every once in a while, something slips through because I'm human. And yesterday, Crystal and I had a bit of a blowout. And our systems kicked into place. You know, we immediately separated, gave space. And I reached out and said, you know, I'm sorry. This is... I'm not happy about this. Can we please come together around this time and repair? And she's, same thing. I love you. I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. So we came back, we repaired very effectively. We practiced what we preach. We sat down, held hands face to face, went through everything, all of our feelings, addressed them. We're accountable to the other person for them, put their needs above our own, and moved forward. And the rest of the day was great. It was still a very overwhelming day for me, myself, personally. And Crystal decided to surprise me later that night with a bit of a road trip out. And she didn't tell me where we were going, and I had no idea. I was just told to dress comfortably. I was like, all right, cool. I guess I'm going to sit on a park bench somewhere. And we go and we leave. And when she ended up surprising me and booking us in and taking me to a float tank experience, which is basically a sensory deprivation tank, which is exactly what I needed. Too much stimulus, too much phone, too much stress, too much, interaction, too many communications. And it was unbelievably fulfilling and rejuvenating and centered me completely, relaxed everything from head to toe. And above all of the stuff that I felt for me, what I felt more than anything was loved and supported, and that my needs were put above hers. She didn't have to do that. I've never talked about going to a float tank. I mean, I loved it and I've thought about doing it, but she looked at the situation, looked at me and said, wow, this guy's having a very stressful day. We were disconnected earlier this morning. I don't like being disconnected from my husband. I love him. He's my best friend. I'm going to do something that helps him. And by helping him, it helps us. And it has. And it's unbelievable. And today it's a new day. And it's phenomenal. It absolutely, I had a great sleep instead of a crappy sleep, and I feel closer and more connected to her. So I love you.
I love you. Thanks for bringing up that story. That kind of wraps up that we have all these different components. We started with communication, and then values, passion, and growth. It just kind of, you can take any kind of story when you're practicing these things. It takes a little bit of all these components plus many more. There's probably tons that we could come up with that we could add to what makes a world-class relationship. But these were some things that kind of came to mind recently. And with them all coming together, you can create, even if you have a giant, like we just had a giant blowout, you can create something so beautiful that comes out of it. And that's why fighting is not, that's not how people break up. It's what you do with that fight. It's how, if you have children or you're having children or you're going to have children in the future, fight, repair, and love each other even more. Get to a place that's even more beautiful than when you started. From that fight, make it worthwhile. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. One of the biggest events that's we've been creating or trying to create, and we're always going to have to work on this because it's one of the hardest things that I've ever done. We learned recently how to try to meet your partner's needs and put them ahead of your own. And that sounds really great. That sounds almost like a Mother Teresa thing to do. I'm really hurt and I'm going to take whatever it is that you need and I'm going to make it happen. That sounds glorious, but really get to a place where you're angry at someone or feeling like you're not being heard or you're misunderstood or hurt in any way. And all of a sudden just try to take someone else's needs and put it in front of your own. You need your needs to be met. That's an absolute normal, basic human thing to need. And being able to take that. So when I first heard it, it sounded ridiculous. Like, that sounds wonderful, but I'm never going to do it. And it really I'm sad to say that I think that I felt that way until I saw my husband do it. I saw him do it. And he's probably done it before that too, but I saw him do it in a moment where he has always never done it in the past. And I can only imagine that it would have been very difficult for him to do. And it surprised the crap out of me. And I was so loved and so cherished. I felt all these wonderful things, like all of a sudden in the middle of a fight that didn't need to happen in the first place. He just basically took my hand and was like, I love you. This is what I think you need. Do you need that? I'd like to give it to you. And it blew my mind and it restored my faith that is exactly what needs to happen in a relationship and that I wanted to do that after. So, yeah, like what do you want to say about that, about meeting each other's needs, or how do you anticipate your partner's needs, or any of those things?
Well, speaking specifically to that event, like Crystal mentioned, a few months ago, we attended an absolute phenomenal event called Date with Destiny from Tony Robbins. I'm not going to say it changed my life because we've always been on a path of growth, but it accelerated the quality of my life significantly. And out of the entire 5-day, 5-night, massively overwhelming, taxing, and unbelievably emotional event, one of the things that came out to me as priority number one was meeting my partner's needs. And it scared the crap out of me a little bit because when you meet your partner's needs and you put yourself in a place of vulnerability, there's a chance that your partner can hurt you. And not necessarily maliciously. Maybe they just by accident, they didn't recognize it. It's not a strength of theirs. This is new, so it's clunky and they did something by accident. And if you allow your lower self to get involved, you can quickly shut down, close off, and say, nope, not going to do that again. He is always like that. She always responds like that. Done. I'm done. And you put up a wall, which only serves to further drive you guys apart over the long term. So I started to ask myself better questions. And when I would reflect on past fights or when I would think about how I would handle a future one, I would say, in that moment, I want to ask myself, does it really matter? What the hell does it really matter? What do I really want out of this fight? You start asking yourself better questions. Is it really important that I'm right and she's wrong? Do I really care? What's more important? If I only had two choices in my entire life and I had to make it right now, Do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? The answer is clear, regardless of emotions. If you can put your emotions aside and you can just look at that, the answer becomes obvious. And I have been able to start to implement that. And it feels wonderful. I mean, at first it scared the crap out of me. And I just dove into the void, into the darkness, knowing that I love Crystal and she's a wonderful person. And that even if it was a little clunky at the beginning, that if I gave her enough space and time, that she would recognize it and she would come back and she would respect and nurture it and support it. And that's exactly what's happened. It's been a little clunky. We're not perfect. We're continuously growing and refining. But it's getting better and better. And it only brings us closer and closer.
Mm-hmm. One question I have for you about that is, when you were describing that when you were going to meet someone's needs or you were thinking about it, but it scared you, what was it that scared you?
The thought of, what I would call being rejected, right? And that's a word that I used to use a lot. And it's not actual rejection, now that I've learned a lot more and discovered things about myself. It's the fear of not being loved by you. It's the fear that if I do something, you're not going to accept it. You're going to reject it. You're going to not love me. And that fear is there. And fear has a place in your life in certain times. But this is not one of them. So I just said, thank you very much. I see you there, but I'm choose not to listen to you. And I put it to the side and I chose love and trust and faith that it would work out, because I'm married to you and you're pregnant with our child. And I have to believe in you. I have to. And I do.
Yeah. And along with that, I believe that you can get to that place, especially if you've been putting in the time, making the decisions to talk about something and going through a difficult time to get to a better place. That I think, we can have unreasonable fears in our head. And I think that it's important for us to, put that aside. But I do believe that one reason why we can trust each other so much is because we've gone through so much. We've created situations where we can repair and trust each other again. So yeah, I totally believe that. And it just takes practice, guys. When you do it once and it doesn't work out, like if you were to go, I love this analogy, which thank you, John, for teaching me how to love analogies.
I got a big smile on my face right now.
If you were standing in line for a concert for an artist, getting tickets, the best artist that you've ever even dreamed of seeing, you would never want, this is the top one. If you got to see them before you die. And then someone in the back of the line tells you that there's no more tickets left, but you still see this big long line. Are you going to just leave and be like, oh, okay, darn, there's no more tickets. I guess I'll never see them. No, you're probably going to go to the front of the line. You're going to ask questions. You're going to go to another line. You're going to look online. You're going to get on your smartphone and you're going to look online and see where else can I get tickets. Keep trying. Pretend your relationship and the world-class relationship is like seeing your favorite artist before they break up, before they stop playing. It's just something that, love that as much as all the other things, and even more than all the other things in life that you love. So yeah. So I guess at the end of this, I would just like to challenge our listeners. Push harder. Go through the things that are difficult. If something seems hard, it's going to be worth it in the end. My nursing degree was so freaking hard. It was difficult. It was challenging. It was taxing on me, on my physical health, on my mental health, my emotional, my partnership with my husband. It was in every single way, but you don't build a muscle without breaking down some tissues. You need to get stronger in all of these ways. And that's exactly, if it seems hard, you can make it so worth it in the end. So I would personally, I would just challenge you that if something feels difficult, it's going to be worth it. So go through it, follow. And even if you just, we only know so much. We've educated ourselves on how to be better together and how to be better as individuals. We've gone through plenty of things, but we use those tools. We find the things that work. We find the things that break down these little barriers and these walls and these cultural norms that we don't want to be a part of anymore. And we move ahead, and we're so excited about where we've gotten. It's so true when John said the destination does not matter. It's the journey, who you're with, who do you want on that journey. So what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, something that I want to add that I think gets very overshadowed or judged in our society, especially Western culture, and that's mental health and self-development. If your car breaks down, you don't hesitate to go to a mechanic. If you need your work done in your teeth, you go book it in with a dentist. If your back needs alignment, you call a chiropractor. You don't hesitate at all. You use these professionals and their expertise in order to improve the quality of your life. But when it comes to communication and it comes to personal development and growth, all of a sudden we think that we're born with all the answers. We're never taught it. We're never taught the importance of it. We're never taught what to expect. And we're never taught to have high expectations for it. So when you go through this journey, you have a lot of choices. You have podcasts such as this. You have books. You have workbooks. You have online courses. You have live events and workshops. You have coaching. You have counselors, psychologists, therapists. Now, I'm not saying you have to use every one of those resources, but personal development in general, specifically, I'm going to say counseling has a very negative stigma towards it. So just be open-minded to the results and be open-minded to how you feel and what the benefits are for you versus what people tell you. Try out many things and don't give up. If you read a book and you hate it, read another book. If you hire a counselor and you just don't get a good vibe, fire them. Find a new counselor. It's a very intimate experience. You need to have somebody that you can trust and open up to. And whatever you do, never stop trying. Keep growing. Keep moving forward.
I like it. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. This was an awesome conversation. We hope you got a lot out of it, and we very much looking forward to seeing you next time. Down the road, we're looking to do a series where we talk a bit more in depth about specifics that we've discussed today. So be sure to check out our next episode, and we look forward to it.
Have a very successful day. We started this podcast because we are both extremely passionate about personal growth and development. Without fully understanding the benefits at the time, we actually began seeing a counselor at the beginning of our relationship to gain tools and learn more about ourselves. That eventually led to multi-day workshops, physical books, audiobooks, and as many other resources as we could get our hands on because we saw such massive results. But we want to take you on a ride and share some of our most important lessons and discoveries that have made the biggest impact to us.
Whether you're single, looking for love, or have already found that special person, we aim to be the #1 resource to help you design your world-class relationship. For more information on topics and to join the conversation, please visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/world-class relationship. Join us next time for another episode of Intimacy Exposed.